This edition of the West Tigers podcast brought to you by The Ambush. Join your fellow West Tigers fans for an afternoon of fun at West Ashfield when the Tigers take on the Raiders in Canberra. Everybody's welcome, watch the game together, and it's all free of charge. And don't forget to get your tickets for our road trip to Bathurst to see the West Tigers in action. It's in April when the Tigers take on the Panthers. Bookings are available now. More details at westtigerspodcast.com.au.
Hello, welcome to the West Tigers podcast. This is episode number 303, joined by Gary Watson and Steve Stretton.
I think you just had an episode, mate.
Already fumbling my words.
You had your own episode.
It's been, I hope it's not that sort of season, Gary, where it's like that. But boys, I'll start with you, Steve, because like me, you weren't on Sunday after the side's 18-16 trial win over the Warriors. Were you more encouraged or less encouraged in terms of an expectation for season 2024, or were you round about the same mark?
Oh, no, I'm definitely more encouraged because there's not much of a mark to go by. There's only one way for us to go, and that's up. And I thought, if I was to talk about the game, it'd be pretty much repeating what the guys said the other day and also what's been all over the forum. I thought the first 25 minutes was promising. I thought there was some good signs. A lot of work to do, but it's whet my appetite for this week. That's for sure. I'm looking forward to seeing our top team play for longer minutes and see what improvements are made.
Gary, we ran a podcast poll for man of the match from Sunday's game.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting one. There was lots of people in the running. I'll go through the top three. So we had Caesar, who actually took away our man of the match with 41 votes. So quite impressive, and won it quite easily. In front of one of your favourites, Eddie, the Ginger Ninja, Alex Seyfarth, came second in the voting with 33 votes. And then it was Fatape, the centre, who had a really strong game, I thought, got the third most votes on 24.
Okay, I suppose a couple of maybe unlikely candidates there, at least probably if you were looking at favourites going into a man of the match poll. But Steve, I'm going to just read out some of the comments from the West Tigers podcast forum in the aftermath of Sunday's game. Tiger Ton, he says, based on the first 20 minutes with our main team, I thought we looked good, much better shape and structure. We looked like we controlled, went on attack, especially in the opposition 20. Lots of positives and some good performances from a few of the young blokes. Much like what you said in summation earlier, but was there anything you could pinpoint in that first 25 minutes in terms of a standout or why the structure looked good?
Yeah. The first thing that grabbed my attention was our go forward off Appy. We were Stefano and Clemmer in particular were really strong running off Appy, and Clemmer more. I noticed Clemmer more than Steph was running flat off Appy, letting Appy take a couple of steps at a dummy half. We were getting quick play of the balls, and we were getting good momentum through the middle early in the game. That was one thing that really caught my attention. The other thing, I suppose, was just, I wouldn't say our shape because we weren't overly expansive, but I would say our structure looked quite sound, and that was obviously Caesar. He was leading the team around the park really well, and I thought Sullivan, whilst not setting the world on fire, looked good next to him. So it looked like a halves combination that could work. So that's probably the initial things that I took away.
I think I read a comment, Gary, about the props. There was much less pre-line passing from David Clemmer. That seemed to be almost a tactic last year, although I'm not sure if that was just a Sheen's philosophy. They were doing 200 plus passes at the game at training. There was less of that from Big Clem on Sunday.
There was less from Big Clem, but I thought there was more from Stefano. Especially if you watch back that first set of six we had, when we went down and we got the repeat set, and so we had a second set. In that period, Stefano actually threw two balls before the line. He threw one to Isaiah Papali'i, and there was another that I think he linked up with one of the halves. So I think we're going to see a little bit of Stefano playing that kind of link role that a lot of clubs use their number 13 to play. I can see Steph doing a little bit of that from what we saw in his brief minutes on the weekend. But I do have to agree with Steve that it was so impressive how well both Steph and Clem were getting onto the ball off Appy. That's something we're kind of calling out for all of last season, and it looks like a lot of work's gone into it over the off-season.
Tiger Town SFS, Steve, a regular on the forum, he says, I think Tupou shouldn't make the starting team. Lob, an interesting option given his size and goal kicking. Stain also looks very small and gets dominated too easily.
I was pretty critical of Staines, but then Gary actually reminded me that he's coming back from an injury. I'd forgotten that, and so that might sort of be a little bit to do with it. But I thought Staines struggled to bring the ball back at the beginning of sets. It wasn't a strong game. I'm quite keen. I don't know where Naden's at fitness wise, but if he's fit and ready to go, I'm actually quite keen to see him get a start on the wing if Olam and Toa end up in the centres.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of Naden in that wing spot. I feel he's a much better centre. I think at times, because he has a habit of drifting in and out of games a little bit, I think when he's in that wing position and the fact that he's getting that slightly less amount of ball, I think he's more prone to drifting in and out of games when he's on the wing. So I think he just loses his way when he plays on the wing a little bit.
Yeah, I liked Lob also, but I don't want to say let's put him in because I'd like to see him play a little bit more. Really I watched him play for 30, 40 minutes and that's it. But his ability to like when he set up that try coming through and taking the high ball, that was amazingly promising, and we haven't had that for a long time. So he's got to be in the mix. I'm looking forward to seeing him have another go this week. I'm just looking down if he's in for this week. I can't remember. But, I'm keen to see him again. Yeah, he is in this week.
TGRZMN. I'm not sure what that stands for, Gary, but he said our first 20 minutes was very positive, more positive than I saw in 2023. But he said the Warriors' kids are much better than ours, so depth could prove an issue if injuries strike.
Yeah, a lot of our kids are very, very young. A lot of them are in top 30 spots. That's a little bit of a concern I do have, but they are very, very young. We've got 18, 19-year-olds going out there and playing. They're not just reserve graders going out there and playing. They're Jersey Flegg, they're SG ball players who are playing big minutes in our trials over the last couple of weeks. And there's SG ball players who are really in contention for that round 2 side. Guys like Lachlan Galvin and Talon De Silva, even Fainu. These are all extremely young guys who are in our top 30. And not just in our top 30, they're very close to our top 17. So we're a very, very young squad. And I think that may become an issue during the season. Once injuries hit, we're going to be relying on a lot of younger players who don't have a lot of experience playing against men.
Yeah, and it's not just injuries either, guys, because these young guys, we know what it's like. It's a long season. And, I was listening to a pod with one of the young guys the other night, and, he was talking about it was Galvin, actually, Lachlan Galvin, saying, one of the big things to get used to is tackling men. It's the first time, which sort of brings it home how young they are. Like, even if they don't get injured, they're going to get tired. It's going to be a hard slog to be at first grade level all season, and they won't be. They won't be able to maintain that.
And that's the point. It's not just tackling men; it's tackling men for 26 weeks straight. Yeah. And for a young guy, you may be able to do it for 3, 4, 5 weeks, but then it starts to take a toll. That's why I like to see a young guy spend a little bit of time up in first grade and then go back down and play in the lower grades for a bit as well.
Gary, Dirty Reds, he, along the same train of thought, he said a lot of kids in our top 30 still off first grade standard. Do you think that's poor sort of salary cap management or squad management, or do you think that's something where we just have to cop it? We're going to be young and going to take time to develop.
For me, we've got these highly rated juniors that we rated highly, juniors that had interest from other clubs. And as part of their contracts, some of them have built in automatically moving into the top 30 at certain points. There's another couple more that move into the top 30 going into 2025. Now, I guess the proof of whether that was a good decision or not is probably still at least 12 to 18 months away. It's whether these guys become those strong regular first graders that we need them to become. If we have half of these guys who have moved into the top 30 because their junior contracts have a top 30 component moving into future years, if half of those guys fail and don't make the step up, then it was a really bad decision and we got it wrong. But if the vast majority of them step up and become regular first graders, then we got it right. It's really hard to tell right now, but I think it will cause an issue this year. I think I'm hoping it's going to be some short-term pain with some of these guys for a long-term gain when they actually do develop into the players that we all hope they're going to become.
All right, well, enough on that Warriors game, boys, because we do play the Dragons in Mudgee on Saturday, and we're going to preview that a little bit later. But I thought we'd jump into an old favourite, which is buy, sell, and hold. A couple of topical ones here. I'll start with you, Steve. John Morris, assistant coach, will help improve our defensive structure this year. Buy, sell, or hold?
Yeah, I'll buy that. It's a bit early to say I've got any evidence of that after just one game with almost 30 players being used, but he's got a reputation of having good defensive structures and being able to get a team to work together, which is what we need to do, not have blokes jump out of the line, not mention any names, AJ Kapoa. And so, yeah, I'll buy it.
Yeah, I'll buy it as well. Pretty much the same reasons as Steve. I don't think that I do agree the evidence probably isn't there yet. I thought the structures were fairly good in the weekend, but there were a number of missed tackles that I found quite concerning. I think it was 51 or something missed tackles in the game on the weekend. And yes, we had a lot of young guys playing towards the end, but that's got to improve.
Steve, question 2. Gary will stop hating on Alex Seyfarth. Buy, sell, or hold?
Oh no, I'll sell that, because Gary's greatest skill is putting hate on people. If only everyone out there knew just how much anger is built up inside that fella, they'd know that to be the case.
Yeah, but anyone who's met you, Steve, would understand why that feeling is being expressed towards you. Everyone else finds me lovely.
I don't think the buy, sell, and hold was about me.
Gary, every compliment you give Seyfarth is qualified by the fact that you say he's getting the most out of his ability. It's a very backhanded way of complimenting someone.
You're actually asking the wrong guy, Eddie, in asking me about that, because I probably have a fairly similar opinion of Seyfarth, and I have gone on record before saying that if he's in our 17, we're not making the 8. But I'm prepared to pull that back a little bit, because even though I don't think he's what we need at 13, we need more like, a Yo or a Trbojevic or someone like that style of player. I think we don't have that player. Seyfarth was pretty good on the weekend, and he played better than I'd seen him play, I reckon.
I will give him a compliment. I'd have him in our probably top 17 at this point in time. I'd have him as one of the bench props. I'd probably have him in front of Alex Twal at this point in time. So there's a compliment for him. He is showing signs of improvement. I thought he finished last year quite strongly. He cut out some of the silly errors and the silly penalties he was giving away in games. And as long as he keeps those out of his game, and he does need to continue to improve, because I do think he is a squad player, but I think he's done enough to earn a spot from that first game. I just don't want it to be in the 13. That's my biggest problem, is I don't want him in that 13. I want better in that 13. Problem is we don't have it. So I think he'll start the season in the 13.
Question 3, Steve. We still have a bottom 4 roster on paper. Buy, sell, or hold?
No, I've got to sell that. Based on what I've said before, I'm starting the season optimistically. I think we can do better than bottom 4. I'm hopeful that we can push for the 8. I'm hoping that if we have a little bit of luck as far as injuries stay away, that we and a couple of guys come on. These are the things I've said before, the caveats I've put on it. I'd like to think that we can be pushing around that 7 or 8 mark at the end of the season, because it is only winning 50% of your games.
Gary, I didn't say there that we couldn't make the 8. I just said that we might have a bottom 4 squad on paper, but Steve was very defensive.
Very defensive, straight to. Though I do guess even Benji Marshall hasn't come out and said that we have to finish in the 8 this year. I think
this is a setup.
I think Steve's batting on his own here.
On a serious note, though, Steve, like I didn't watch every game of last week because there were 8 trial games, but some of those games, I know it's, the Broncos and stuff like that, but some of those outside backs, even clubs like the Bulldogs, debuted a couple of these outside backs, and these guys just look quicker than ours. It's just an area where I think this year, even if our structures are maybe a lot better and our halves, the depth is better, that we still are probably, we need 2 or 3 guys to emerge in those outside backs to get some real, make something out of nothing tries.
100%, mate. Like that's what you just said then is spot on. We need a good year regarding injuries, which I've already said, but we need a couple of blokes to stand up that hasn't happened before. Like we need, for example, I just like a Lockie Galvin, right? Has to come in and be first go ready, or Sullivan. Sullivan just hits the ground running, and 5'8" at the West Tigers is what he's always wanted, and it just happens for him. We get a couple of the Fainu brothers, these forwards become good regular first grade players, damaging forwards. We have Talon Silva come through and be a good second rake for Appy, and I think it's possible, but that has to happen. Those things have to happen.
I think I said a similar thing last year. The concern I have around our squad is there's too many ifs. Like Steve's just gone through 6, 7 things that have to happen for us to be pushing towards that 8. That's the concern I have. That's why I probably see us. I'm hoping. I think we'll be getting out of that bottom 4, but I have us around that 12th position, which is only just outside the bottom 4. So my concern is, yes, we can make the 8, but there's too many ifs to be relying on that happening, in my opinion.
I don't want to start the year on a negative, Gary or Steve. I'm going to upset you here, but I'm going to say it. I went through and had a look at the last 2 years combined teams' wins, okay? Obviously, we were last because we've run last the last 2 years, so there's no great revelation there. But we were last on 8 wins. The second last team for wins, Steve, over the last 2 years is the Bulldogs on 14. So that's nearly double the amount of wins. Like, I just think having a look at those squads, I think there's 8 or 9 teams. I've written down 8 here that we are no chance of finishing in front of unless, aliens land on Earth and kidnap half their players. I know that sounds defeatist, but I just think that's where we're at.
Yeah, and you can't argue with that. Where we're at right now is dead last, right? That's where we finished last year and the year before. But Eddie, you've played sport at a high level and you understand the psychology of sport. Winning becomes a habit, and culture can turn around very quickly within a group of people, especially on a sporting field. And Gary's right too. There's a stack of ifs. There's a stack of ifs and a lot of stuff that's got to happen for us to have a good season. We start the season 9-4, right? That all the confidence is going to go, and we're dead ducks. I don't think we'll come back from it. Because we're so used to losing. But if some of that stuff happens, right, there is a new culture in the club. There's a new feeling in the club, right? There's a bunch of young blokes coming through that are proven winners, right? They went through Harold Matts, wasn't it, undefeated, and there's about 4 or 5 of them from that squad coming through. If Buller continues to improve, if Olam finds form, if our halves, whichever combination, if they do gel, it's a good halves pairing. Our forward pack is a great forward pack. Like Stefano and Clemmer in the front row. We've got one of the best hookers in the game there if he stays fit. Papa Lee, he played the best I've ever seen play. Bateman, I don't know where he's at. Hopefully he'll do all right. But that's a good forward pack. It's missing a 13, and it's missing that crunching front rower. But yeah, if the Fainu brothers, if they look all right, if they come good, all of a sudden our bench is stronger. So it is a team that can make the 8, and I believe that. Right now, you can laugh at me because I said that last year and we finished last because none of that stuff happened, right? I still believe in the talent of the players. They just didn't put it together. No, we haven't got Reece Walsh, but we've got Jerome Buller, and he can become a Reece Walsh.
There are examples, Gary. I'll just say there are examples of teams going from, close to the cellar or the cellar to the top 8. Like the Broncos did it, the Cowboys did it. Even Newcastle last year was sort of a bottom 14 for a while and all of a sudden into 5th place. But just, we ran a long last and that's 8 wins. And even the Dragons, who have been battered from pillar to post the last 2 years, they've had 17 wins over the last 2 years, which is more than double that we've had. The Dolphins have had 9 wins and they only played for 1 year. We played for 2 years. So I just think, and my next question to you is, Steve's going to hate this one, but I'm saying, is there a way that finishing 16th will be a successful season?
I don't like. No, there's not. I can't buy that.
Not a way at all.
That finishing 16th is a successful season. No, I can't buy that.
Well, let me give you a scenario though, Gary. Let's say 16th, we have 8 wins, so we double our wins from last year. Tell me another side in the NRL that's going to double their wins this year. I think that's successful.
Yeah, not when you're starting from 4 wins. So I can't buy that, Eddie. We need to be pushing. Like Steve's going to hate me now. We need to be pushing out of that bottom 4. We need to be pushing into hopefully that 10th to 8th position. That has to be where we want to end up at the bare minimum. I think realistically we're going to be around that 12, but you want to be in the last couple of weeks of this competition still with a chance of sneaking into that top 8. That's what we need. That's what builds momentum for this club. If we finish 16th this year, even if we do double our wins, that's not building momentum going into next season. And that's the issue I have. We've got Jerome Luai coming across next season. Now, I'm going to be much more excited if we can at least see the 8 from where we are. If we're sitting in 16th place, that 8, even with Jerome Luai coming next year, still seems a long, long way away. I want to make the 8 this year just as much as Steve does. I don't think we'll get there, but he is right. If all his ifs come off and maybe a side or two gets done for salary cap cheating and lose all their points, there's another if for you, Steve, then maybe we can sneak into the 8.
I'm not saying, Steve, that, Benji Marshall should be going in the team meetings and saying, boys, if we run 13th, we've had a great year. You want to try and go and win every game that you play because it's a 2-horse race every game that you play. But I'm just saying, people outside a West Tigers fan, if you were analysing the squads and the finishes in the cold light of day, I'd say more than 90% of people would have us in the bottom 4 this year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no argument there. What I'm saying, and maybe we're playing with words here, but what I'm saying is this squad of players and coaches, this group of men going out there every week are capable of winning football games. And with a bit of luck and stringing a few wins together and getting some confidence, maybe they can win enough football games to push for the 8. That's what I'm saying. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation for them to have, and they would have that expectation. They mightn't be saying it, but they would have that expectation. And I don't think it's unreasonable for us to have that expectation that can happen. But I get it. If you're basing on percentage of improvement from last year, we're not going to get very far. I think we can think a little bit more positively than that at this stage.
So if I put you into a really tough situation right now and asked you where you think, not what you want, not what you see through your rose-colored glasses or your black, white, and orange glasses, if I asked you for a prediction that you had to bet your house on, where do you think we're going to finish this season?
I can't tell you where I think because it's too early to determine that, right? What I can say is, and this is not rose-colored glasses. This is I'm analysing, right? this team is capable, I think, of finishing in the bottom of the 8, 7th or 8th. I think they can do that. Now, are they going to? I don't know. I don't know. Right? It all depends how they gel. But the group that we've got, the squad that we've got, can do it.
Well, it was this time last year, Gary. I had a lot of experts said the Tigers could push for the 8 based on the signings that we made. So we haven't lost any of those signings. I suppose it's just been such a barren run that it's. I don't think I'm alone in feeling that finishing outside the bottom 2 or 3 would be half a successful season.
Looking at our squad, I do believe our squad is a stronger squad than last year. I think we're stronger in the halves. I think Aiden Caesar showed on the weekend, as long as he can stay fit and healthy and play at that sort of level, there's a big improvement in our halves this year that I think is only going to get much better in 2025, but there is an improvement in our halves. I think getting a guy like Nofaluma out of the club, that's an improvement by subtraction. I think we're going to be much better out wide because of that. If Olam can stay fit, and I'm using ifs now, then there's an improvement in the centres. We already, for most of the last season, I thought we had a forward pack that competed really well. So there are positives there. This is a better squad than what we were seeing last year. And the fact that this squad has had so many upgrades over the last 2 years, I'd be very disappointed, and I think it's a failure if going by your prediction, Eddie, or your question that started this, if we'll finish 16th. 16th can't be a success when you have a look at the turnover of players we've had in the last 2 years and the upgrade of players. I don't think anyone can argue that the squad that got the wooden spoon in 2022 is far inferior to the squad that we're putting out on the field for 2024. And if we can only manage to get to 16th with that amount of turnover and that injection of talent that we've had, then it is a failure. You can't write it any other way. But I still don't think, even with all that turnover, that it's going to be quite enough to get us up into that 8th position. I really hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping all those ifs that Steve and I have mentioned come true, and we sneak into the 8. Now, you have a look at the amount of times we've just missed out. We are due for some luck to come our way, and maybe all that luck that we've missed out on over the last, decade of not playing finals football, maybe all that turns around this year, and we get a lot of that luck this year, and we can sneak into the 8, and we can be that team. But this year's exciting for me because of the growth, because of the changes in our club, because of the coaching changes, the admin changes, because of the players we've brought in, because of the players we've got coming next year, because of the young guys we've got coming through. So if we can get to a position where we're finishing around 12th, I still think there's so much to be excited about for this season and the future of this club. I can't wait for the football to start. Even if it is what I expect, another difficult year, I think there's so many positives that we can look at this year. And watching players develop is one of my favourite parts of rugby league, and I think we're going to have a huge chance to do that over the next 18 months.
So I just want to draw a comparison based on what you just said then, Gary. And it's because, we've used this word before with the change of board and management of the club. We've said we've got this great opportunity. Now we have got an amazing opportunity, and I'll draw 2 comparisons. Right now, I don't like going back to 2005 because it's a long time ago now. But back then, we had an opportunity. We got a bunch of young blokes who started to believe in themselves and had skill. Right? They had skill, but they also had no fear. Right? They had no fear that they were winners. And they started to win a few games of football, started to toss the ball around, and because of the way the game was played at the time and all that sort of stuff, they got on a run, and they were throwing balls and catching balls, and nothing was going to ground, and they were beating teams by 20, 30 points, right? They start that belief just changed, and they ended up winning the comp. There was opportunity, and they took it. Now, we then stuffed it because we didn't do anything after that. But then we had another opportunity a few years later when we had Tedesco, Moses and Brooks, right? We had these young blokes coming through that were winners, that had played all their junior football and won heaps. And we had this great opportunity to take that attitude and bring it into first grade, and we stuffed it, right? We totally buggered it up. And we lost it. Right? We lost them, and we lost the opportunity. I reckon we've got another opportunity right now, which is what Gary just said. We've got those players. They will play fearlessly because they don't know what failure looks like, and they will have a go. And if they're good enough, there's the if. Right? If they're good enough, who knows what can happen?
Steve's got us winning the comp now, I think, Gary. So I'm very excited now for this year.
Well, I'm just trying to balance it up, mate. You've come on here, bloody hell! It's like September.
I will say though, Eddie had 12 teams in front of us that we couldn't possibly beat on Sunday. He's now got up to only 8 or 9. So by this time next week, I think he'll have us in the top 4 as well.
I was going to read them out, Gary, but we'd be on here for 4 hours if I did that. So I won't. Gary, this is one I've cooked up again, and I think I'm going to disagree with you. Having the round 1 bye this year is an advantage.
You've done this one before, and my answer hasn't changed since last time. I hate that we've got the round 1 bye. And it may have been Steve I was speaking to yesterday about this very conversation. And to me, it's a very exciting kickoff to this year. The game's over in Las Vegas. It's exciting for the players that get to go. It's exciting for all the fans. It's exciting for the other teams who aren't playing. Is it next weekend? Yeah, next weekend. It's exciting for them too because they're a week away from playing. It's going to be a big event, that Las Vegas game. And then our players have 2 weeks to wait. We're playing our last trial this weekend. We've then got 3 weeks until we play again. So I can't see how it can be an advantage for us. Plus, it means we miss out on getting a bye when it could actually be beneficial. When we're halfway through the season and the injuries are starting to kick in, and a week off we could actually get some value out of. The only positive to it is with the amount of changes that we've had, especially in key positions in our halves, it gives us an extra week to get ready. But I'm really worried if we need that extra week to get ready because that means we're behind the 8 ball already. We need to be ready for round 1, even if we're not playing to round 2. But I can't see it as an advantage having a week 1 bye.
I disagree, Gary, because I think, like you said, the halves...
You can be wrong.
No, but listen to this, okay? I was quite adamant last year after going to that Newcastle game in round 2 at Leichhardt. I said, if we lose this, the season's going to fall apart, okay? And Declan was saying, it's early days, let's not play Bateman, blah, 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 blah. I said, no, if we lose this game, we are stuffed because we've lost to 2 bottom sides at home and everyone's going to be negative. The media's going to be all over us. So my theory is this year we have a bye and then we have Canberra away, which is a very winnable game, and we have the Sharks at Leichhardt. So even if we win, say we win one of those 2 games, so after 3 rounds, we'd be sitting on 4 points in the top 8. You can't tell me psychologically that is not a good thing for both supporters and players.
But what if we started the season and we won the first 3? That's just as big a if as the if you're giving me now.
But we're guaranteed 2 points. That's my point.
Yeah, but everyone's guaranteed those 2 points. We would have got those 2 points at some other time. The only I do see your point though. It could be a boost confidence-wise, but if we turn around and we lose round 2, then I don't really think it makes that much difference anyway.
Okay. Steve,
I don't think it matters. You know, like in regards to if we just got to win football games, like confidence will come from winning football games. Having that first two points after round 1, as Gary said, if we get flattened after that, it's all gone. But I can't go past, Eddie, the fact that you need that bye when you're busted, right? You need it when you're fatiguing, especially going on what we just said 20 minutes ago about our young squad. And both our buys are pretty much a waste. Right at the beginning, right now, right at the end. Maybe not if we're pushing for the 8, maybe not. But if we're out of contention, then both buys are a waste.
Well, at least, Gary, if we have that bye, right at the end of the season, if Bateman wants to go on holidays, you can just stay on holidays. He doesn't have to come back for another game. That's a positive.
Yeah, hopefully we don't see any players heading off overseas on a 24-hour plane.
What about the coach? Should he go to Fiji for a week this year, Gary, or do you think he should maybe stay in Sydney this year?
I think he should stay in Sydney.
Excellent. All right, Steve, Las Vegas. It will be a success, the 2 games in Las Vegas for the NRL.
Yeah, look, I'll buy it I'm getting a bit deep tonight. What's success? What's the mark of success? What's the purpose? Are we trying to sell TV rights to the US? Is that what it's all about? I don't know. Do we want the 18th team to be the Los Angeles whatever? What are we doing it for? I imagine it's to broaden the audience, which has got to be TV. I think it will be a success here because it's whipped up a frenzy. Whether it's successful for US market, I don't know. Good on them, though. Good on them.
I think it's primarily about opening up the betting markets in the US. You get a foot in the door over there. You have a look at their population at 300 million or something, whatever it is. I don't actually know their population, but it's massive. It's about getting a share of the betting revenue, is my opinion on what the main purpose of it is. But it's also, I think it does create a lot of excitement back here for the game. I think the fact that it's going to be played in a world-class stadium. We talk about our stadiums here. This is truly a world-class stadium. So I think all that's exciting. It's going to be important that they at least sell a decent amount of tickets. I haven't seen an update on where they're sitting with ticket sales. But if you go to that venue and it's a third or less than a half full, then it's probably not a really good look. If we're going to do this, it needs to be a good crowd there to kind of harness that excitement it's going to bring. I think there'll be plenty of excitement here. I'm looking forward to watching the games. I can't wait to watch them. So, but I do think it's primarily about opening up those betting markets to the US.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching them too. It is exciting. I think it's a good initiative. I'm not knocking it. The one thing that concerns me about it though is the dimensions of the field. It's apparently 5 meters narrower than a normal footy field, and we're taking reasonably good sides across there that have fairly good defensive structures, and we all know that you narrow the field, you still got 13 blokes in your defensive line. It's going to be much harder to find space on the field, and therefore the product that we're selling to a new market is not necessarily as expansive and going to look as good as our game can look if we're just pushing it up the middle, because even though they're going over to entertain, they're going over there for 2 points, and the coaches are going to say it's a tight field, so we're going to play tight footy up the middle, an early season as well, and our game perhaps won't look as good. So that concerns me a little bit.
Fair point, Steve. Gary, we've got 2 to go. Wayne Bennett would be worth pursuing as a coaching director for 2025. Buy, sell, or hold?
Yeah, I buy that. If he's available, and the rumours are floating around today that Parramatta, I think Parramatta's denied it, but there are rumours about him taking up the coaching director's role at Parramatta. If he's open to coming to Sydney for a coaching director's role, I think we'd be mad not to speak to him. The relationship he has with Benji Marshall, I think he's someone Benji Marshall's going to listen to. He's someone Benji Marshall is going to trust. And they've worked very well together in the past. So I would be all in on trying to get him into that role if it's a role he's open to doing. If he's speaking to other clubs in Sydney about taking on a coaching director's role, then we need to be speaking to him.
Steve, I think most clubs now, it's sort of in fashion over the last decade to get someone that oversees the whole program. We obviously originally had Tim Sheens doing that, but that slot is vacant at the moment. Does it need to be filled?
Yeah, I think it does, especially under the circumstances that we find ourselves in. I think Benji Marshall, no matter how good he turns out to be or how confident he is in his role, he is going to need some sort of mentor or some sort of someone, a confidant to confide in. So I think for us, especially right now, it's most important. But in saying that, you need the right person because you don't want someone to come in and squash Benji either.
Yeah, you wouldn't put Scott Fulton into that role, I don't think.
Possibly not.
But what I do think, the fact that Shane Richardson's at our club, I think that gives Benji quite a good mentor, someone who's been involved in the game at a lot of levels. He's coached himself, not at the highest level, but he has coached himself. So I think that's someone Benji can trust. That's someone who from all reports has his back and is 100% behind him. So the fact that we don't have that senior figure directly above him right now, I'm a little bit more confident and comfortable with that while Shane Richardson's in that CEO role.
You can't go to Shane Richardson, though, and ask him about defensive structures or attacking plays and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? And I know you could come back and say, well, that's what he's got a whole coaching team for. But I think ideally, I agree, Shane Richardson would be a good mentor. But I think ideally, someone with football experience and proven success would be great for Benji.
But I don't think there's many of those people who you could put in above Benji, though. I think
you're right. There's not.
I think you're looking at Wayne Bennett, and then, I don't know who else you could possibly approach for that role.
Last one, Gary, and Steve's asked we put a 5-minute time limit on this one because he doesn't want to be looking in the rearview mirror. But I'll see how we go. Justin Pascoe ended up looking better in terms of how he left the club after his interview with James Graham. Buy, sell, or hold?
I'll buy it, but not just because of that interview. I actually quite respect the way he did leave the club. He didn't really kick up a fuss going out. I've seen a couple interviews. There was another interview on some other podcast I found today where he spoke pretty much about the same things. But he actually says in that interview that he respects the outcome of the review. He respects the need for the review. And for a guy who kind of lost his job through that process, I do have to say, I do have to give him credit for that. Now, I think he presented himself in both those interviews trying to put his best foot forward and trying to make himself look as good as he could in those with his answers. But it's his side of the story, and he's a guy at the moment who's unemployed, and going out there and saying everything was my fault, I don't think he can really do in the situation he's in. So I don't have too much of an issue with most of the stuff he said. I think there's an element of truth to all of it. I do think at times he lacks a little bit of self-awareness, and I think that came through in that interview.
In regards to Gary, he's talking about, because a couple of things that stood out for me is he sort of wondered why the media talked about him and they don't talk about other CEOs. But, he was probably the only CEO that had a podcast, official podcast on their website. And he also did Tales of Tiger Town. And that was one of his innovations that, probably coaching staff didn't love.
Yep, I have to agree with all of that. He also acknowledges at times that the West Tigers are a big club and they get a lot of media attention through that. Well, along with that comes a lot of media attention of the CEO and of the chairman, and of all those things he was kind of criticizing during that interview comes because he's at a club that gets a lot of media attention, and a club that gets a lot of media attention that hasn't made the finals in 11 years. These are all things he acknowledges, and then the only issue I really have is he then goes on to try and explain those away a little bit. I think he probably would have been a little better off to say these were issues, but I do have to give him credit. And I don't want to sit here and bag him because I do respect the way he went out of our club. I don't think he has been disrespectful to our club. I don't think he could have went to town on our club in either of those podcasts that I've heard in the last 2 days. He could have really ripped into us if he really wanted to. And I think most of his answers were just trying to paint himself in the best possible light.
Steve, I did feel, I don't know if feel sorry for him is the right term, but just in terms of, working with that board, I think he said at one point it was a 9-man board, and certainly the Fulton thing, I was just sitting there in disbelief what I was hearing there, listening to the Pascoe interview. It seemed like whether he knew from the word go it was going to be a disaster, or whether he just, found out after a few weeks, we stuffed up here. That should never happen.
No, it shouldn't. And look, I'm similar to what Gary just said. I feel for him a little bit, and I've felt this for a fair while. Having an association with the club as we've had, I think he was in an extremely difficult position. I think he was working with a board that were hard work, hard to get on with, that were very demanding, and could be highly irrational. And I remember we were sitting in a meeting with him one night, and his phone just would not stop going off, and it was the board. It was different people from the board just at him. There was something going on. I can't remember what it was. There's something going on, and it just didn't stop. And he was just getting everyone's opinion individually on the phone all night, and you could see on his face it was just stressing him out. And so I think it'd be really difficult. He talked he said the right thing politically, in that his chairman was a great support for him, and that's what he had to say. But you know, Lee Hadjimantalis left this club with such a temper tantrum and a carry on, which showed to me his real personality. That was the level of governance that Justin Pascoe had to deal with on a daily basis, and that would have been really, really hard. But in saying that, I still reckon there was a fair bit of spin in that podcast, and Gary said it. He was, painting himself in a positive light.
Fair enough. Good luck to Justin wherever he does end up. Saturday night we go to Mudgee. Well, I'm not going to Mudgee. Joel might be driving his bus to Mudgee. I'm not sure. It's Bathurst isn't too far away, but I don't think he's going to Mudgee. But we kick off with Magpies played before it, so New South Wales Cup NRL looks pretty close to, Gary, what you would expect from a team having their final hit out before they take the field in round one. Given it's 3 weeks away, I'm pretty sure everyone that is physically able to play is tried to put his best 17 out there.
Yeah, the interesting one for me that is kind of lacking is Talon De Silva. I really expected to see him in the game this weekend. He's been picked, I believe, for SG Ball this weekend. He's playing. So that was a little bit of a surprise for me, because if I was going into round one, I've got him pretty close to my top 17. So I was really surprised to not see him included and see him in SG Ball instead.
Is there any different sort of outcome you want from this game, Steve? I think most people don't really care if you win or lose your trial games. But, given this is pretty much a full-strength side, outside of a couple of guys that are unavailable, against a side that is favoured, like us, to win the Wooden Spoon this year, I think there's just a little bit more riding on this game than a usual trial. I'm not saying we have to win it, but it can be disappointing to lose to this Dragons team.
Yeah, it would be, but it will be determined by how much time your top 17 or top 13 at least play, and what the opposition do with their team, how long they play their top team for. But what I want to see, I'm not really interested in seeing really expansive play. I think we're a new team, new halves combination, new coach, sort of getting their act together. So I just want to see good structures. I just want to see us go forward. I want to see us quick play the balls. I want to see us organised, good kicking game, kicking into corners. I want to see us coming out of our end strongly, which we didn't do last week. I want to see a defensive structure. Okay, we might have missed tackles. It's early season, all right? It's early season, so we might see missed tackles, but I want to see a pattern across our defensive line of players all going in the same direction and helping each other, and not having to rely on that scurrying last-minute defence, which we had to rely on a little bit last week. I want to see it a little bit more organised than that. If we can tick those boxes, I'd be really happy.
Gary, what do you most want to see? For me, I think there's a bit different context to this trial game, just given the fact we don't play for 3 weeks. I want everyone going 100% this game.
Yeah, 100%. And I would also be looking at, I want to see our starters playing into that second half. And so I want us to go out there.
I want to see him playing 80 minutes, Gary, some of the outside backs.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important to, even guys like Appy who has a lot of experience, but just to get that fitness level up, there's no fitness like there is of playing games. And we've got a 3-week break after this. But the key things on the field I want to see, Steve mentioned it a moment ago, our wingers were really poor on the weekend at coming out of our own line. For me, that's a key indicator I want to see this weekend. I want to see if it's Tupu and Staines who have been named as starters. I want to see them getting us off our own line, doing those dirty meters early. If they can't do it, then you get a guy like Lob out there or someone else, because I want to see what he can do. Because I thought he was very impressive last weekend, and I have him really pushing Tupu. If Tupu doesn't have a much better game than what he showed last week, then I don't think he holds down a spot for round 2. So he needs to show it this week. If he can't show it this week, then I want Lob to show that effort coming off the line. I want to see Jaden Sullivan has been picked at 5'8" again. Fainu is still out injured. We've got Lockie Galvin on the bench. But I think Sullivan, right now, having a look at the squad, he has to be the favourite for round 2 now. I don't think you can put Fainu in without him having played in either of these trials. So Sullivan this weekend, I want to see that footwork. I want to see him taking the line on. I want to see him looking like a dangerous player. I thought he played well with Caesar last weekend, but he wasn't dangerous enough for my liking. I want to see him playing attacking football. So I want to see a little bit of that this weekend. I want to see our forwards still pushing through the way they were. I want to see that our front rowers getting the ball on the advantage line off Appy like they were on the weekends, especially Stefano and Clem. I want to see that continue this weekend. I think that's crucial. I think that's a key part of how well we're going to go this season. Those guys Appy bringing those guys onto the ball and getting them across the advantage line. And I want to see our... Sorry, mate.
No,
go.
Finish. I was going to say, just going back to your comment of Staines coming off a line and Tupu. I'm really looking forward to seeing this other fella, Alamalo, play. He didn't play last week. Now,
he didn't.
This is the guy who's come across from Super Rugby, and he's a big body, isn't he? He is fairly big. Yeah. So I'm like I agree. Lob looked good. I'd like to see more of Lob, see what he can do. But I'm really interested to see this guy play, because I would say that was probably our biggest weakness last week, that starting our sets. And I don't reckon either of those wing spots those guys are guaranteed to start.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they're guaranteed. I thought they were both pretty poor. And as you said earlier, I do give Staines a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. It's his first game in a long time after what was a fairly serious injury that happened in a game. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of just not holding back, but a little bit of care being taken with himself after such a strange injury to happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if he takes a couple of weeks to get back up to pace after that. Amalolo, I want to see him as well. They didn't want to rush him. That's why they didn't send him over to New Zealand last week, but I'm really keen to see how he goes. The last thing I really want to see, outside the defence, I do want to see those defensive structures hold a lot better. I want to see the first contact a lot better in defence. I thought we fell off too many tackles last week, so that needs to improve. But I also want to see our our red zone attack. There wasn't enough evidence for me last week that has improved greatly. That was our biggest problem last year, our inability to score once inside that 20-metre zone. And we weren't really running as many block plays as a lot of the other sides were running. Reece Walsh when he's played, he's running onto the ball outside men who have ran a decoy line for him. We don't tend to do a lot of that. We didn't do a lot of it last year. And from what I saw last week, we weren't doing a lot of it last week either. So what I found last week is we were running our halves and Buller when he got to the ball. We're running to the corners a lot and running our players out of space. We weren't straightening enough and we weren't creating room for our outside backs. That's something that needs to improve. If we're not going to run the block plays that most sides are running, then we need to be finding ways to create space out wide. And I didn't see that last week. I thought we were too sideways and running guys out of room too much. And so that's a real issue. And it doesn't have to be block plays, but we need to straighten the attack and we need to create space out wide, especially in that red zone attack. And I really want to see that improve this weekend.
Steve, I was just relieved to see Olam on the team sheet because some of his comments in the preseason were a little bit. I was a bit wary, but I'm relieved.
Yeah, I said we were doing a pod together, Eddie, and I I made the prediction that we wouldn't see him round one. It sounded like he was long term out. So that's obviously not the case, which is great. So I'm really keen to see him. I'm keen to see Stuff and Toa. I'm wondering where Bateman is and what's going on. He must still have a little injury. But can I also say one of the things I'm really looking forward to is watching the Fainus go at it again, because I reckon there's a bench spot that one of them might grab, but I don't think there's space for two of them on the bench. So I'm looking forward to see who comes out on top there, because I reckon I'd be right in saying that we all sort of expected Sione Fainu to get the jump, but it was probably Sam Fainu who maybe got the jump last week. So controlled aggression is what they need, not undisciplined play, but they could be a revelation if they can get that aggression under control.
How would you use Lockie Galvin in this game, Gary? Do you think Benji will try and be, a straight shootout and play him 40 minutes at 6 next to Aiden Caesar, or do you think he'll play him with Sullivan and bring Caesar off? Like it maybe cost him a little bit that he didn't get to play last week. I think it probably firms up the fact that Sullivan might get the 6th spot in round 2.
It's really interesting for me because if you go off the base of the side, we don't have a second hooker picked in the top 17. So I think Simpkin is picked, but he's on the extended bench, which he'll play this weekend. But if we're looking at this being a representation of the side that's going to play in round 2, that for me is a little bit surprising. Like, as I said earlier, I expected to see talent in there somewhere, probably in that 14 jumper that Lockie Galvin's in. Now, if that means we're looking at Lockie Galvin to kind of fulfill that role come round 2, that's going to be interesting for me how that works, whether he then goes on and plays 5'8" and we move Sullivan into the hooker role, because I don't really see Galvin going in and giving Appy a break. But I want Appy to get a break. I don't really want Appy playing 80 minutes. He's at a point in his career now where he's getting towards the back end of his career. We have him for another 2 years after this season. I don't think we should be burning him out. I think we should be using him probably 60 minutes a game and someone else coming on and doing that 20-minute stint. So I'm really interested to see how Benji plays that this weekend. If he brings Simpkin on and that's who gives Appy a rest, then maybe we see Simpkin in a bench role. But I'm really interested to see if he is planning on picking Galvin in that 14 jumper, which this side kind of indicates. I'm really interested to see what he does with that. I think Galvin has to come on and play at 5'8" at some point. But how he does that's what's going to be interesting to me.
Okay, boys. All will be revealed Saturday night. I'm sure. Well, Joel will be back Sunday night, Steve, because it's his podcast. I think me and you we tend to be rested on Sunday night. We're just the midweekers. But just before we go, Appy has been confirmed as captain for a second straight season. I guess no surprise there, Steve.
Oh, no, obvious choice and no one else in contention, really. And so he's the leader of the club, without a doubt. Mate, I know you're wrapping up, but can I just ask one question before we do go off? Right, well, I'm going to ask it anyway, no matter what you say. Matamua was picked at 26 this week, so the last extended bench spot. What's going on there? What's happened to him? Is he way out of favour? Is he coming back from injury?
But Steve, has he ever? No disrespect to him, but I think he was just one of a Declan hype player. I don't think he's ever done anything, Matamua. No, I'm not. Like, seriously, what has he done in first grade?
I think he was. I agree with you. He hasn't done much, but I think he was much more than that, because at the beginning of last season, I reckon the 13 spot was his to lose, and he lost it, and we haven't cited him since. And I don't know whether he's just not like Benji, like Sheens saw something in him that Benji doesn't see. But 26 for a bloke that was pushing first grade last year to get the 26th spot, that's.
From what I saw Gary last year, I didn't think he looked physically up for first grade. And that might sound, I'm not trying to call him soft or anything, but I just thought there was a long way to go.
Mate, he debuted in 2022. So it's really been a bit of a long time between drinks. So I don't know. I think that's a real mystery, because the talk was he was going to be that ball playing lock that we've been looking for, that we're still looking for, that we don't have anywhere in the club. he's a player we need to actually come through and fulfill that role. But where he's been selected this weekend and what's happened over the last 12 months, it doesn't look that likely, does it?
No, it doesn't. Just before we finish, boys, I'll ask you for one word. I'll just give you a position and you tell me who you think will be there for the Canberra game in round 2. 5'8", Gary.
Sullivan.
Steve?
Sullivan.
13, Gary.
Safe off.
Same.
And where will AJ Kapoa be in round 1, Gary? I was hoping he might be, watching on the television somewhere, but, unfortunately, and I don't want to, I hope he turns it around, but for me, I don't know if it's mental mistakes or whatever it is, but he does one or two things a game where I just think that's park football standard.
Do you really hope he turns it around? I'm not sure.
Well, he is your favourite player, Steve, so I know you hope he turns it around because you said he was going to play Origin, I think, this year.
I'm just getting word through. I think he's just been named vice-captain.
I'm hoping he's at West Ashfield watching the game with us.
That's where I'll be. Tucking into some Chinese, I think, Gary. So thank you for tonight, boys, and we'll talk about the game Sunday.
Thanks, boys.